Books, they're all available for purchase this morning, but this is the book we're here to launch today. So this is AAS Barbour, 70 Not Out. So Stewart and I met, well, it seems like quite a while ago. It was quite a while ago. Justin, am I on shot? Yeah. 7 months ago. Well, we started work on it 7 months ago. It's been a long 7 months, and I had a full head of hair then, and Stewart had jet black hair when we started doing this book. But it's been a real experience. Then so is playing with a toaster in the bath. It's been a real experience working with Stewart. So first time we met for coffee, and Stewart paid as usual. And Stewart kept on checking his phone for the cricket results, and it was an Ashes test. Ireland, England were playing Australia in the Ashes, and I thought, this guy's a bit rude. He's not even listening to what I say. I'm used to that though. But it was the Ashes. So then I realised then that Stewart was a big cricket fan. So because he was a cricket fan, then I came up with the concept then of the book title AAS Barbour, which is Arthur Alexander Stewart Barbour, 70 Not Out, which is a cricket, so that's his cricket name, and then his score. So it's 70 reminiscences of Stewart's remarkable life to date. So I'm going to hand over to Stewart, and then we'll rattle through 10 slides containing photographs from the book. And Stewart has provided, as well as providing excellent text, he's provided all the quirky stories. So, I'll say as well, just thanks to the sponsors as well who made this possible, and a number of them are here today. So John Costley is here, Gavin is here, my mum and dad are here. Or sorry, my dad's not here. This isn't my dad, in case you hadn't worked that out. My mum and daughter are here. Eric's here somewhere. Yeah. Thanks for your sponsorship. And Jerry is here on behalf of Jerry and his wife Geraldine. And William has also sponsored it as well, so thank you, William. But William can't really, as I said last night, can't really refuse, because otherwise he'd have to walk everywhere or get the bus. Feel free to do that, yeah. So yes, so Stuart's going to say a few words now.
Right. Well,
don't stand front of
oh yes, don't stand front. Where do you want me to stand? Right. Folks, thank you so much for coming today. What a turnout. As I said earlier, I wanted the waterfront, but this is fantastic and great to see everybody. I hope you all got parked reasonably easily. It was all quite news to me where to park, etc. But it's fantastic to see you all here, and thank you for that. A few quick thank yous, if I may. This project or whatever is all this man's fault, nothing to do with me. Peter said, as quite a few people have said, once we got chatting and I told him a few stories, he said, have you ever thought of writing a book? To which I said, nobody would be interested except maybe my family. And he...
I regret it now.
Yeah, so will everybody else in a second. But anyway, he said he had done this and had the contacts, etc., etc., and one thing led on to another, and as he said, I said, could you write 70 short stories? And I said, if you give me time, I can probably write 170. But certainly, it's all Peter's fault that this has happened. But it's actually been a lot of fun. The three people that I need to really thank is obviously Peter, whose idea it was, but they aren't here today. There's two gentlemen who gave their time. Fantastic. The first one was Clive Schooler, who actually proofed it proofed the stories. Right. And anyway, that is not an easy thing to do, because when you're looking through it, you know, you can very easily skip bits and you see whatever. You've got to really study it and whatever. And one of the things that I'd said to Peter, if it's all in the King's English, everybody will say, Sturdy never wrote that, for he doesn't talk like that. I love slang. I love to use Ulster Scots. And he very kindly proofed everything, but left my expressions in there. And I think it sort of grated on him a bit. But anyway, as at the very start of the book, I talk about my ancestors. One of my ancestors was hung, drawn and quartered after he was caught at the Battle of Humbledon Hill.
Sounds like a good idea.
1402. And as I said, luckily for me, he had left one or possibly two sons. Otherwise, this wee book would never have been writ. And actually, when I was, the makeup people don't work on a Saturday, so I had to sort my hair myself. And as I was spraying and doing this with two mirrors and all this stuff, I ended up looking like Mel Gibson in Braveheart. My face was blue as well. But anyway, that's why I might be a strange colour. But Clive did a fantastic job, and it's not an easy one to do. And the third person who really has made all this happen was Thomas Johnson, who, amazingly, I don't know how he does it and how he had the patience to do it, of taking the text and the photographs and lining them all up and all that sort of stuff. But not only was it a skillful job to do, I don't know how he does it, but Clive was making suggestions, Peter was making suggestions, I was making, and how he didn't go to Australia or lose a will to live, I do not know. The two gentlemen aren't here today, but again, I want to mention them and thank them. I hope maybe they'll be watching the video or whatever. That's the formal bit over, is it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Also, sorry to mention in terms of sponsors, thank History Hub Ulster for sponsoring the ISBN code, so thank you, Gavin. But it's really to raise money for Cancer Focus, all this. So I'll read you Clive's review, and then before we launch into the overheads. Clive said, "I don't think I've ever known such an interesting and well-travelled man in my life, and I've certainly never read of one like him. To have visited so many countries in the world and climbed so many mountains is a feat beyond words. The story is riveting and will be enjoyed by many, I'm sure attracting lots of money for Cancer Focus NI. As I say, it's an unbelievable story of a man who has been everywhere, who has taken part in every possible opening in life. It's terrific." So I think it is, whilst I'm sick of the sight of both Stewart and the book, you know, when you read it for the first time, it is an amazing story. And Peter here at the front's got sweets, and he's trying to hand them out quietly.
I brought enough for everything.
Oh, did you? Right. So we'll rattle through the. Do you not want to do your your gag here?
I forgot to do it earlier. Right. I'm going to do it.
Do it now. Yeah.
Okay. Well, see, what I really wanted to do was my speech would be very short, and I wanted to sort of. But anyway, nerves got to me, and I forgot to do that bit. But anyway, right, we've done that.
Never noticed anyway, Stuart.
Right, okay.
So I'm going to rattle through 10 slides, and then Stuart's going to talk about the 10 slides. So this is the first one, and because we're in East Belfast, this is where the story all began for Stuart. So a few of you might recognise a few of the guys in this photograph.
Sorry, what do you want me to do?
Well, face that one.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Right, face the audience. I didn't want to make the book too personal. I wanted to sort of talk about funny things and anecdotes and all that sort of stuff. But Peter said it doesn't read correctly unless you do a little bit of your own personal whatever. So that's basically what's happening here. My father was a minister in Craiga, Presbyterian. He was the second minister because the first minister was my grandfather, Dr. Stewart, who's also in this photograph. And the plan, I think, was a bit dynastic. I think I was lined up to be the third minister of Craiga. But for some reason, at the age of 3, a red pen was put through my name. And when you've read the book, which you'll be buying later...
We've locked the doors.
Yes, you will understand why I was written off at 3, and there will be some of you who will wonder why my parents weren't hoping for so long. But anyway, that's the score there. And this photograph was actually, I had thrown I think it was a maths test, and I was at Harding just down the road, and the church was being renovated, and this was a bell to my grandfather. I had thrown a sickie to avoid the test. Belfast Telegraph turned up, wanting me and my dad with the bell, and it was on the front page of the Telegraph, and I was rumbled big time.
Thank you. this one then, Stuart, there's 2 photographs here,
Yeah.
a few years apart.
Yes, a few years apart. Basically, again, on the personal bit at the start, this photograph this one here is Alison and I have known each other all our lives. Our dads were both each other's best men, and this photograph shows, as I say, Alison is the second on the left, and Peter said to me on the little caption underneath, he said, you haven't actually said which one's you. To which I said, well, the others 4 kids are girls. And I rather hoped it was obvious.
I stick with my first comment.
But anyway, yeah, so we've known each other all our lives, and we've just had our 40th wedding anniversary there this past
Hooray!
summer. And obviously this is us at our wedding.
My mum and dad have had their 55th recently.
Right.
Hey!
Well done.
And I'm not 56.
So anyway, you know, that covers that one, I think.
So then this is up to Loch Esk in County Donegal, and so some of you might recognise Loch Esk Castle here, but you maybe mightn't recognise the castle in its before state.
The reason that is in there, my folks, due to one reason or another, ended up with a caravan looking for somewhere in 1947 as to where they could park their caravan in Donegal. Through family, whatever, it was suggested that this estate had just been bought and they could go and park there. And we've been going to Donegal or Loch Esk ever since. And as you can see, this one on the left, after our good friends, the Swans, actually sold the castle, it actually lay vacant for a number of years and went into disrepair. My folks, after later on, they bought a little farm with an old house on it. The idea being was it overlooked the lake and they would build a retirement bungalow. That never happened because this little house was obviously about 300 years old or whatever. It's pre-famine. Now, it was, Ireland is full of pre-famine houses, 4 walls, thatch goes, you're left with 4 walls. The people who lived in this house, 2 of the family went to the States, America, and done good, as they say, and came back and put a slate roof on the old homestead. And when you have a roof, you have a house. And basically, when my folks bought the place, we went in. This had been used for, sorry, I keep turning around, apologies. That's my best side, of course. The house had been lying vacant for 20 odd years, and it was being used as a sheepfold. And we went in and whatever, and it was in time warp. There was the crook, as you can still see, the harness stand, all the various things that nowadays would be pinched in 2 minutes. But it lay in there, and we got interested in it, whatever, and made it more habitable. I've been working on it since 1966. My parents bought it, trying to keep the style of it, as you can see, and the China dogs and all that sort of stuff. And I've been working at it ever since, and it's been, in the chapter in the book, I referred to it being my life's work. I like DIY, so I do all the bits and pieces, and Alison sleeps with the electrician, the plumber, the washing machine man. She's just a typical clergyman's daughter, really. Anyway, Loch Esk Castle, of course, is now, as you know, now a 5-star hotel built around the original. But that photograph there was probably taken in the early 80s, maybe, and it really had got into an awful state. But I had such a great time there and still do. And the reason it's there and why I'm talking about it is that had a big effect on a lot of things that I do now and have enjoyed doing for years. I was very fortunate staying there. I had the shooting of the estate, with 500 acres. I had the fishing of the lake, which the Swans own. It was all great stuff. And of course, farming, driving tractors, which ended up with me doing a master's degree in agriculture, even though I lived in the city. And the Circuit of Ireland used to go around Loch Esk every Easter Monday. That got me into rallying, and that caused all sorts of problems. So it had a very big effect on things that happened later on.
So just for any guests, I'm not naming names, but I see Georgie wincing there when you mentioned shooting. So maybe you should you should say about your policy on shooting has changed over the years.
Again, like so many people who wildfowling, whatever, I'm very anti it now. But at that time, it was the sort of thing that one did. It was shooting. There was actually everything that mostly shot was actually had bounties on them in those days. Cormorants, because of fishing on the lake, eating the fish, etc. Pigeons, unfortunately. I'm very against it now, but in my late teens or whatever, and living in that sort of environment where it was the done thing and that was a pointer, etc., that was kept there, it happened, and I regret it to some extent, and sorry if I'd offended anybody. I would be very against it now. So
Robert here is a big twitcher, a big bird watcher, and you mentioned cormorants then. So if anybody wants to hear Robert's favourite joke, ask him afterwards, please. It's not...
I know, don't you dare. There are ladies present.
It's not for respectable.
No, exactly.
The horse, Stuart, sorry.
Well, basically, Alison was heavily into horses. I was heavily into something you could do that with, as opposed to, my God. This was Harvard, was our horse that we took up to Donegal, and that photograph was actually taken on our silver wedding anniversary. And the poor fella, I was in my wellies taking the photographs. Alison was doing her bit in the horse. And Helen now is still into horses, rides race horses, trains race, all that sort of stuff, and has her own beautiful Appaloosa, which is in the book as well.
Is it?
Well, the story of it is.
Volume 2. So you mentioned rallying, Stuart. So these are a few of your rallying adventures with a notable failure at the bottom. Talk us through that, please.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, it's because of the circuit, watching the circuit as a wee fella, and getting into it. And in those days, I'm not quite sure what the statute of limitations is, but I was driving round the lake at 13, and the Swans were all older than I was. They had cars, etc., and they allowed the wee fella to get out there and do his bit, which was great fun. So anyway, when I went to Queen's, there's actually, well, yeah, I'll cut that bit out. Sorry, when I went to Queen's, I had plenty of time, but no money. So it was all done very much on a shoestring. My good friend Peter here, who's turned up, was fantastic in putting up with all sorts of mechanical failures and dear knows what. And our good mutual friend John McBride also helped to actually build the cars. We were all, certainly John and I were very much DIY, not quite sure what was what, but we had great fun. And certainly those couple of photographs there, that's actually Peter there. There he is. And he very kindly put up with all sorts of carry on, but the crack was great. This one here, Peter...
That one there, you mean?
Sorry, that one there. Peter was lucky not to be involved in that. The bottom line to it was I had a major 5 times end over end wee whoopsie. And this was the car that we...
It's very Frank Spencer, this.
That's the remains of the shell. One of the stories in there, and there are motoring stories as well. We spent a full week reshelling the car because I was being sent... We were getting paid to enter and do a rally for Queen's. No car, spent the week, Peter spending, etc. And we went off in 7 days from having bought a shell, reshelled, whatever, went down to a rally in the south, with the entry and this insurance and all paid, and we went off. We'd done this stage before, big long bumpy straight about a mile long, coming down over a brown hill to a 90 left, and all great, car going great. For those who are interested in cars, we have changed gear at 8,000 revs, going great over the hill. Road was covered, the boys had all thrown stones and dear knows what onto the braking area, and we went straight on, launched off the ditch, through the hedge and into a field. And Peter, a very placid, long-suffering guy, called me names that I'd never been called before, or indeed since, quite rightly. First corner of the rally.
And the end over end?
Well, basically, yeah.
This one?
Yeah, sorry. Okay. if I tell them too much, they won't buy the book. The end over end
Well,
was...
lock the doors, sure.
Yeah, okay. It was a very bad night, and it had a limited slip diff, which keeps both wheels turning, which is difficult in a front-wheel drive car. Travelling at rather high speed, and flooded road, car snapped left, launched off a ditch again, but didn't actually hit anything, but just rolled across a field. And it was only afterwards that we could actually count all the marks in the grass where we'd actually gone. And I think I'll leave it there, because there were other things happening that night which were actually quite exciting and quite fun. But anyway, that's the score there.
Well, you can read about it in the book, but your co-driver on this occasion was a rather large gentleman.
Yes.
And so you were upside down, were you, at the time?
No, we're on our side.
On our side, so he released his...
Seatbelt
Stuart was you can tell the story.
Well, we were lying this way down, but we'd gone so many overtimes, didn't know what was up and what was down at that stage. And this chap was fairly heftily built, and of course he released the belt and of course came crashing down on top of me, and I think I suffered more injuries from that than I did from the actual end over end. I think that's your point.
Yeah. The next one then is, this is a collage of, or for Peter, doesn't understand big words like that, a collection of photographs from Stuart's travels. So he talk us through these ones, starting with the spring one, maybe at the top.
Yeah, this is in 1974. I went to Africa for 3 months with my very good friend Johnny Swan from Donegal, from Loch Esk, and he was out teaching in Botswana and said, "Do you want to come out and join me?" etc., etc. And we were going to sleep in the car because the old Renault 12, the front seats came back perfectly flat, and you actually could have a double bed. As I've often said to his wife, I slept with Johnny a long time before she ever had the privilege. But basically, they
is this what you're talking about?
Yeah, sorry. We travelled for 3 months, sleeping in the car in the bush, which you daren't do now. So there are a few stories in there about rhinos being poached in the night and all sorts of things. We did about 11,000 miles through southern and eastern Africa, and went right up to the northern Kenya, planning to go to Ethiopia, but Haile Selassie at that time, there was all sorts of problems, we had to change tack. But we had a lot of fun. Shortly after we left the Kalahari or Botswana, the roads were all those days rutted and whatever, and we clipped a rock and it punctured the petrol tank. So we had all sorts of problems trying to sort that out, and at that time petrol in the bush and out on the sticks was all coming out of 50-gallon drums, and it cost about 3 times at that time that it did at home. And for most of that 3 months, all we could smell was our petrol dripping out into the sand. And this was one of the attempts that I had to put a wooden thing underneath it, a skid, to try and protect the tank from leaking. But what we used was DAS, it was in those days, make a nice putty of washing stuffy, yeah, and stuck it on, and it actually would work for a while. But then, of course, you hit a bump or hit a thing, and off it came. So that's what that's about. We then went on to, yes, Peter, you keep pointing at this, my apologies, folks. It's natural, I think, to turn around, is it not? This one here is very quickly.
That one there,
yes, that one there. One of the things that's actually not Africa, of course. I'll drop to these two if I may. You put that one in the wrong place. One of the things we did was actually to climb Kilimanjaro at the last minute. We did it for about 20 quid in those days. Now, of course, it's big business, etc. But here we are, after we'd gone to the top of Kilimanjaro, and I don't know whether you can see that photograph there, or sorry, that thing. We actually, these German folk, they had a vervet monkey, pet vervet monkey, which also climbed Kilimanjaro. As you'll see later on, that climbing of it started me into the mountaineering stuff, which will come in a wee second. This here is really, I crossed the Kalahari in a cattle truck and managed to get a flight back on a government plane. And these guys, their job was to chase all the animals off the runway before we took off. There were goats and cattle and baboons, you name it. And they were dedicated animal scarers. So at this DC-3, again, it's all in the book, could take off, and that's what that one's about. This one here is actually a later trip in 1980. It's actually in Lake Titicaca, which is on the between Peru and Bolivia, and we were out on the island, and it was hot, etc., etc. We'd been very careful what we'd been eating and drinking when we were in South America, because there was all manner of bugs, etc. And we also were on a time scale, and we didn't want to actually lose time with somebody being sick. So we're very careful. But we were on this island where supposedly the Inca civilization, birthplace of the Inca civilization, because there was a spring in the middle of the island, sorry, in the middle of the lake. And Lake Titicaca is very slightly salty. And this spring is actually an artesian principle. That's where the high Andes, the meltwater, goes down the aquifers, in onto the lake, and comes up on this island, and supposedly is a clear, pure water. And in a weak moment, having been so careful, I thought, I'm going to test this out and see if it's correct. Of course, drank some of that, ended up with amoebic dysentery, and ever since that, and that's 43 years ago, I can't cope with curries or strong, I just can't cope with it. Not that I dislike it, but whatever's gone wrong is still wrong. And that's the reason for it.
So in the book it says he's on a bus for 24 hours at this stage. Luckily the bus had a wee box at the back with a hole in the floor where I spent all day, except when someone almost beat the door down. So I was drinking 7-Up now, and by now it was reappearing quickly as clear 7-Up, complete with bubbles. Perhaps not your finest moment, Stewart.
I'm not quite sure that was necessary to read out, but anyway, that's
What's in the book?
I know it is, yes, but
now's not the time to tell me it shouldn't be in the book.
No.
Just before we move on to the next slide, then you had the Renault 12
yeah.
Didn't let you down, apart from one time when you had to. I was telling Forbes about it last night.
Oh yeah, if the car had given us grief, we were homeless, we were stuck, we were way off the beaten track, we went up weird and wonderful park, side roads and all sorts of things you're not supposed to do, but great fun because we had our house with us. Now if we'd had major problems, we were in big diffs, and the only time we really had difficulty was we were actually in Olduvai Gorge, and we were coming back up with that, and the spark was giving grief, which wasn't firing. So I said to Johnny, you drive, I'll sit open the bonnet, I'll sit on top of the engine, and by playing with the spark leads, you can get a little bit of an extra bit of spark if you hold them slightly off the top of the plug. So we came up out of the Olduvai Gorge or whatever, with me sitting on the top, playing with the leads. Other than that, the car did exactly what's what. But in retrospect, if it hadn't gone well, and that's why I think I called it the chapter, The Car Was the Star, we were in big trouble. And one day I drove 1,000 kilometers on dirt roads because we were in a hurry to get back, because I had to plane to get to your mum and dad's wedding. I'm going to say the funeral, the wedding, same thing. same thing, only different. Sorry, this is my...
They had it late, didn't they?
Yes, they delayed it, yes, but I had to still come back early, and I haven't forgiven them for it. But I could have had another 2 weeks before Queen started. Anyway, my niece very kindly drove up from Dublin today. I think that covers that one, Peter.
Okay.
Yeah.
The next one then is in your time as a conservative centre. So I thought, well, that sounds quite dull, but Stewart being Stewart, he's turned
It was dull.
Yeah, he's turned all these a dull job, and a few of the stories are certainly in the book. So.
Well, one of the things that I hope, and I kept saying this to Peter all along, I have been a very, very lucky guy for lots of reasons. You'll see in the book a few times that I shouldn't be standing here at all. I should be away somewhere else. But I've been very, very lucky. And what I really wanted to emphasize that, nobody wants a smart ass. I just was lucky, right place, right time, etc. I had a master's degree in agriculture, as I've said. Peter also did the same course because we wanted another year's rallying. Anyway, at least that's my excuse. So I ended up with a job I hated. Absolutely loathed and hated it. It just wasn't me, and I thought life's too short to stick with this. So I walked out of it. To what? That was a big question. Anyway, various things, a number of years later, per chance, I got involved in the fledgling conservative business right at the very start. Pure chance, right place, right time. And I started my own business. And this photograph here, sorry, Peter, I know it's looking that way. This photograph was just after I had opened the business. As you can see, the hair was still the right color. Within a week, it was gray. And I was just there, right, and it was actually very good to me. And I also managed to get out of it at the right time by pure chance, because somebody wanted in and I wanted out, because I knew I was working 6 days a week and worrying myself to death on the 7th. Pure luck. Everybody said, oh, that was very clever. No, it wasn't. Lucky. And I want to emphasise that point.
What's the connection with James Bond's car then, with the Conservative Centre?
Well, I have several stories, because obviously I was dealing with the people all the time, and if you're dealing with people, you get stories. One lady rang up and wanted to put on a conservatory. Her husband recently died, she told me, etc., etc., widow's mite and all that. So out I went and looked at the site, and there was no way of accessing to put the conservatory there, accessing it into the house. And I said, is there, your garage is attached, could we go on there some way and facing south, blah, blah, blah. Oh, she said, well, come on in and have a look, but excuse me, the garage is an awful mess. I said, a bit like my own, but hers was very different in that I went in, rubbish everywhere, whatever, in the corner with boxes sitting on the top, all covered in dust and whatever, and garden tools leading up against it, was, to my utter amazement, an Aston Martin DB5. Now, that's the original one from James Bond. And I said, well excited. And I said, that's a very valuable car. And I think she said something like along the lines of, oh, really? So I suggested that she got it properly valued, etc. And it was about 2 or 3 months later, it was in the Belfast Telegraph, that a lady from this area where I had been was delighted with what she got for her husband's old car. And they're now worth about £1 million. And the thing that annoyed me was I never even got a thank you phone call.
There's also a story about a swearing parrot in this. It also mentions the best football team in Northern Ireland, of course, Ards. So,
okay, we'll leave it at that one.
Mountaineering then?
Well, as I said earlier, I climbed Kilimanjaro with Johnny really at the last minute. And he'd always say, would you do it again? I said, not in your life. I was 21, it nearly killed me. And we kept putting it off. Anyway, years later, my daughters had done the Duke of Edinburgh Award. His daughters, he lives in Dublin, had done the President's Award. He said, how's about us all going, whatever, with the girls, and the 2 wives can go to Zanzibar while we're up the mountain. Anyway, that was the plan, and at the last minute, his daughters couldn't go. My 3 daughters and myself and Johnny made up 5. He, at the last minute, couldn't come, so I said to Alison, you can go to Zanzibar on your own, you can sit at the bottom of the mountain, or you can come with us. And she came with us, and all 5 of us got to the top of Kilimanjaro. Helen was only 16. Anyway, that's, I thought, actually great. I was 54, I think, and it was so much easier at 21. So shortly after that, I went to a talk given by a guy who had been on Everest, a doctor doing all sorts of things about, oxygen debt and cerebral edema and all that stuff. And I asked him in the question and answer bit, I said, how come I found it easier at 54 than at 21? And he said, well, of course, University of Life, less gung-ho, bit more, take it slowly and all that stuff. Don't build up an oxygen debt, because if you do that at altitude, you can't get rid of it, and then you really are, all that stuff. Anyway, I thought, well, I've done 6,000 meters or thereabouts. It went okay. I wonder, could I do 7,000? So I went off the following year to Aconcagua, which is not a very well-known mountain, but it's the highest mountain in the Andes. It's actually the highest mountain outside the Himalayas. And I went to Aconcagua, and fine, great, thoroughly enjoyed it, managed okay. Then, of course, I thought, well, if I can do 7,000, could I do 8,000? And I couldn't afford Everest, it's ridiculously expensive, but I went to Choyu, which is in the Himalayas. It's the 6th highest mountain in the world. And I went teamed up with some amazing guys, and I'd show you. And that's really what these couple of photographs are. Sorry, Peter, keep wanting to turn around. Here I am, sorry, I'm going to point if I may. Here I am at very near the top. You can see my skin has started to go black, in other words, when it's dying with the cold. My eyes are dilated because obviously I'm suffering from cerebral edema. And you're at over 8,000 meters, you're slowly dying, no matter if you're on oxygen or not. And basically my face and my nose has all been a mess ever since. But at that time, I believe I was the oldest person from Northern Ireland to climb to over 8,000 metres, which is 26, well, I was up at 26,750. I'm not sure if that's still the case. I know lots of people have gone higher, but they've all been younger. It was the fact of the old man. Getting to that height was my claim to fame. On the way down, got caught in a storm, and over the radios which we had with us for communication, etc., between the team, we had to keep them inside, all our clothes to keep the batteries from dying, etc. I had been seen in a tent where, unknown to me, there had been an avalanche and the tents were all wiped out. And when I put my radio on again, I heard, "Oh, that was an awful nice fella. That's a terrible shame. What have we got? Oh, that's not fair. Who's going to tell his wife?" And I thought, well, there are only two of us married. The rest were all half my age. And I thought, great. Then I suddenly realised they were talking about me. And up to that point, I had quite happily been the Irish joke. I played along, had fun, blah, blah. And now suddenly I was an awful nice fella. So the moral of that story is never, ever believe a eulogy. Because you're all great when they pop our clogs.
But not many people hear their own, yeah. So then, Stewart, you got involved in one of your daughter's recommendations in extra work. So these are a few photographs from your time as an extra. So if Stewart sent me one photograph from Game of Thrones, he sent me about 1 million, and that's not an exaggeration. So talk us through these two photographs, please. One of them is from Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it's all good fun, and I only do it for fun. Films and TV and all that, the crack's great. And there's so much sitting around, waiting for set, waiting for your time. You might be out for 12 hours, and you're lucky if you get 2 hours of actual filming. The rest of the time you're sitting chatting. And a lot of the stories that I am allowed to say were ones where I interacted with various people and fun we had, because we have to be very careful for, you know, disclosure of all sorts of stuff. But this is actually me there. That was in, I don't know if anybody watched Game of Thrones. I thought it was an awful load of nonsense, but anyway, the crack was good. And the dressing up was powerful fun. But anyway, that's Jon Snow there, and that's me, part of the Night's Watch, which was great crack, and we had swords and all this stuff, and, you know, all professional dressing up, if you like. So that was all good crack. And this one here on the left with Jimmy Nesbitt was the telling of the Colin Howell, the dentist murder thing up in Castle Rock, etc. And
The Secret.
The Secret, yeah. And this is actually me in the chair, and with my awful teeth and my bridges, my crowns, you know, post-rationing, too much sweeties and all that stuff. And I ended up in the chair, and James Nesbitt was a lovely fella. In fact, there was on, the last thing I actually did, it's a kids program coming out at Christmas, and James is actually dressed up. I don't think I'm telling anything here that's important, but he comes out of a bank with a gun. And I, perchance, happened to be passing where he came out, part of a whole group of whatever, and of course we were all, and anyway, one of the assistant directors came over to me after and said, "Sure, God," he said, "that was great." He said, "You look really terrified." I said, "It was easy. I have had, and so have you, Peter, I have had loaded guns pointed at me before. So the memory of it was very easy to replicate in the story. That's in the book as well. It's a little rallying story. So anyway, that's
you
the
stumbled
story.
over both of you stumbled over a UDR checkpoint just after some murder in kind of Dramara direction, and so these guys set up a checkpoint, and then they heard this supposed getaway car approaching. It was actually Stewart and Peter on full throttle, and then he slammed on the brakes, and then what did he say, 8 guns or something pointing
Well,
in the
I think
window.
there was about half a dozen guns each side the window. That's in the book. You're telling them too much. They're not
Sorry,
going to buy the
sorry.
book. You know, come on.
It's getting dark.
Who wrote this thing?
So talk us through this one. You very much enjoyed meeting Zoe Ball.
Well, it's always absolutely lovely. It was a game show, a bit like Ninja Warrior type thing, very physical book, game show. And it was actually Helen again who said, Dad, you would love that. It was all jumping about and doing stuff.
Acting like an Egypt.
Yeah. So I thought we were testing the equipment to see if it was the right, difficulty, etc., but very physical. Anyway, I thought I'd go down for the crack, and I walked into this big shed where they're all setting it up, and I thought for fun, I'd walk in on a stick. So I walked in. And apparently the bigwigs of the BBC were all looking from a mezzanine, which I wasn't aware of, and they saw this. What are we going to do with him? Ageism, disabilities, they were beside themselves. Anyway, it all worked well. I had great fun swinging in ropes and dear knows what and all that sort of carry on. And they actually gave me dispensation to go and actually audition for to see would we all fit, etc., which was great. But I thought, well, now I'll go to this. So next time I went in on crutches. And I got the gig, I think, only because, they thought it might be a bit of crack. It was supposed to be entertainment. Unfortunately, I was the very first to go. And we looked around this course, etc., and there was no practicing, there was no talking. I was right, Stuart, you're on now. What, me? And anyway, Zoe was interviewing before you started, and then Ashley Banjo was to interview after you'd gone around the course. And what actually happens was all jumping and thinking, here's me flat in my face, but we actually started off with a catapult. You sat in the catapult, and then and they threw you out into a big pit of polystyrene blocks.
Balls.
That was quite fun. I ignore that comment. It was all great crack. And as I say, at the end, I was sort of... and Ashley Banjo stuck a mic into my face and said, how do you look? And I said, how do I feel? How do I look? And I then said to him, I applied for this show 40 years ago. And I said, it's the last time I'm using a second-class stamp. Zoe was lovely. I mean, she was lovely in the front of the camera. She's great, whatever. She started off with a hug. When I said I was nervous, she gave me a second hug. And before the day was out, I got 2 more. Off the camera. I mean, she's just a very genuinely nice person. And she saw, I think I reminded her of her dad, Johnny Ball, if you remember Johnny Ball from way back. She was delightful. I've no hesitation in saying that. She also split up about a month later from Fat Boy Slim, and I've always taken the blame for it. I mean, once you meet the real deal, on your bike, Fat Boy. Right.
They're back together again, Stuart.
Oh, really?
And you're also happily married as well. Sorry to break that to you. So this is perhaps what people know you best for in these days. You've brought your rucksack here, and I meant to say that in the foreword of the book, I say it starts. I do the intro, and it says, I can remember exactly where I was when I first clocked Stewart Barbour. It was Monday, 4th May 2015, and I was watching my brother, for anybody who doesn't know, that's my mum's favourite child, participate in the Belfast City Marathon relay race at the bottom of the Mill Road in Newton Abbey. I saw this header running the marathon with a rucksack and camping gear. So I still stick by that. I still think he's a header. So these couple of photographs were taken by me in this year's Belfast, after during Stuart's participation in this year's Belfast City Marathon. He had run the London Marathon the week before. Yeah. So in his 71st year, age 70, he runs marathons on 2 consecutive weekends, and he gets a PW in both of them. For anybody who's familiar with PB, it's personal best. PW is personal worst. So talk us through these ones, Stuart.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to argue with what you've said. people say to me, why did you run with a rucksack? Well, if I go trundling around the streets, whatever, I'm just another old man running about a bit, or staggering about a bit, as I always say. But because of the climbing, etc., I had, of course, been used to carrying a rucksack, and of course, it makes a perfect platform for my charity fundraising. And I never actually collect when I'm out training. I train with this, because obviously I run with it, and people very kindly see this pathetic old soul running, staggering about, and they stop me and they give me donations. I'm coming up in 27,000 that I've raised for Cancer Focus in this last few years. People stopping me, etc. It's a great platform, and I do tend to be seen with the rucksack. As Peter says, yes, this was this year. You know, people like to take selfies and all sorts of things. That's great. But what we particularly liked about this one, I tend to dance and run backwards, and you know.
This is the finish line. He's going backwards.
Yeah,
through.
I do the old lightning bolt. You know, Usain Bolt. Well, I call that Insane Barber. I also do the Mobot, and if there's music, I'll dance and, you know, run backwards, and generally, I'm never in a hurry. If there's people who entertain, oh, you're still here, folks, right? Okay. And this one here, I thought was funny. This is coming up to the finish line, and I'm running backwards, and you know, all that sort of thing. And we thought this guy here was absolutely brilliant. I think your comment was, Peter, you wrote on it, and it was very funny.
I can't remember what it was.
Well, it was basically, you know,
let's eat it, not finish here, so I can get home. No.
Yeah, no, it was somebody who was hungry, looked totally disinterested.
Which is what people are thinking now.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, it's all good fun, and people are so generous. They like to stop and tell me why they're donating, and some of the stories aren't so good, and some of them are very encouraging. But it's a real life-affirming experience to be out there talking to folk, and as I say, the generosity of the general public is fantastic.
So Saturday's your normal day for a run, isn't it? So like, for example, last weekend you were down, so Stewart chases the crowd. He's not fussy. So last Saturday it was in Northern Ireland. What was the victory? Unusual. And but it was Mongolia Thirds or something like that. But so he decided that he would go down the Cathedral Quarter and then go up to the foot. Maybe this was 2 weeks ago, actually. Yeah, in the Cathedral Quarter, then 2 weeks ago, then he was running up Hill Street, and there were these Americans. Share that story just briefly.
Yeah, well, I got chatting to these young tourists, and they obviously this QR code, they photographed it, and when I got back home, they said, "Give me £100," and thanked me for chatting to them. And you know, I mean, that's what just blows me away, that people come to a total stranger and they see this old fella.
Well, he donated online, and then Stuart ran away, and then he heard his phone ding. And then looking for an excuse to stop. Then you checked your phone, and these guys had donated £50 each to you through the QR code. So he ran back to staggered back to thank them for their donation. So, and they were very thankful for that. On the 12th, normally we would have been in Donegal, but this year we were about. I hadn't seen the 12th parade since it was that height, and they were coming up to Barnett's Park. And because we're at Drumbo, I thought, well, I'll go down, meet the guys coming out of town, and, you know, just be sort of doing my bit. And when I got a good crowd, it looks great if you're about to pass out. And on the way up, I raised over £400. And I went back. I had actually, I think it was £11 in coins, in weight, in my rucksack thing. Anyway, I went home for lunch. And counted the dough, etc. I thought, oh, great, whatever. And I said to the girls and Alison, I said, you know, if I go back and get them when they've left the field, Barnett, and go back, and I said, I bet you I'll get more money. And I did. I got over £600 as they were going back. So I raised over £1,000. I ran 19 miles during the day, but I raised, and of course, I love a drunk. They're great. If the weather's nice, they're all sitting outside now, as you know, outside the pubs, etc. And they're giving you a £20 note because I think it's a £5. And it's fantastic. And he also did Belsonic as well. He accidentally happened to be passing by three times when Belsonic was on.
Yes, Peter and Una were there. Yes, I mean, I've got, if it's a crowd, yes, and as I say, when the time's right, I can put on a very good act. And I fell one time a couple of years ago, and I actually fell and flattened my face, and the blood was everywhere and whatever. And the car stopped and whatever. And one of the guys, I think must have been a doctor, because he was all, get in the car and do stuff. And I said, no, I'm fine. Of course, he said, what do you want to wipe off the blood? I said, no, it's good for business. And I actually, again, got a lot of extra cash. Sympathy vote. And this gentleman, I asked him his name, and when I got back, he'd actually put 250 quid online. But as I say, he wanted to clean me up and I wouldn't hear it.
So I think that's the last one. Yes. So thanks very much for coming along today, and thank you, Stewart, for a flavour of the stories from the book. As I mentioned earlier, a couple of times we've locked the door. That's news to you, Davy, Clinton and Jack, who have just arrived. So it's £15 for a signed copy of the book, or £20 for unsigned, and that's your line. And all proceeds go to the vital local work of Cancer Focus. So it is middle of approaching late October now. So of course we're the time when we're thinking about Christmas presents. We're also thinking about birthday presents. I'm the 28th of October, and Stuart's the 29th of October, or is he? Because he was born around midnight, so we might have the same birthday, a few years apart. So I've put there an ideal Christmas present. So yeah, thanks very much for coming along.
Folks, thank you very much indeed for not only coming, but listening to an old man meandering through all sorts of things. Appreciate it very much indeed. And as I say, we will unlock the doors whenever I am suffering from writer's cramp. If you don't want a graffiti on the front of it with my awful handwriting, it will cost you an extra £5.
And also, sorry to say that some people have pre-booked their book. So I know you guys have pre-booked. There's also Wilma's here, so make sure, Wilma, if you're here, you don't pay me because you've already paid, and I think you've paid as well. So thanks, folks. And
thank you very much indeed.
Sure, they'll go to the back of the room then.
Could I do something now which Peter would do if he was here?
Hang on, folks. Sorry, Eric's going to talk.
Could I do something as Peter would do if he was here? This is shameless, but tomorrow night at 10 o'clock on BBC 2, Northern Ireland, Mark Thompson's interviewing me about Sirocco Works and Davison, and he's also interviewing Robert Bell and somebody from Thompson's. It's the story of tea. It's called Talking Tea. 10 o'clock, BBC 2 tomorrow night. Won't cost you anything, Peter. Thank you, sorry. I've never had such a crack on a Saturday morning ever in my life, I think. Thanks very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Brilliant.
Thank you for your kind words.
Goodness.